Welcome. This presentation walks through a proposed data to decisions process for revenue cycle operations at Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago, a large pediatric academic medical center. I work in the revenue cycle innovation team as a senior project manager. A quick orientation on this deliverable. Revenue cycle is the end-to-end process that converts clinical care into financial reality. It starts when a patient registers and ends when a claim is paid or written off, with many handoffs in between. The argument I'll make is that the revenue cycle operates as an information and value supply chain in the sense that Chopra from 2019 uses the term, and that designs the data and decision-making structure around it as a facility layout problem in the sense that Module 4 describes. Most operations leaders face the same kind of questions regardless of industry. How do we move data from decisions at every tier of work, from daily, monthly, and quarterly? Revenue cycle is a useful working example. The same Module 4 principles apply, just in a less obvious settings. Every operations leader in any industry faces decisions that look like these. Do we redesign this workflow or leave it alone? Where do we add capacity? Which offerings deserve more investment? The decisions look different across industries, but they share one thing. The quality of each decision depends on the quality of the data behind it. What I want to establish in this slide is that the revenue cycle qualifies as a supply chain in Chopra's sense. Chopra defines a supply chain as a network for moving information and value across handoffs and partners. Revenue cycle does exactly that. Patient registration captures eligibility data. Clinical delivery produces documentation. Coding translates the documentation into billable codes. Claim submission moves the bill to an external partner, the payer. The payer responds with a payment or a denial, which generates more information. Recovery work then converts the response into either revenue or a write-off. The terms along the bottom of this slide are the healthcare-specific vocabulary I'll use throughout the rest of the deck. I've defined them once here so the supply chain logic stays in focus from here on. Data to decisions is more than dashboards. Davenport and Harris from 2017 describe analytics-driven organizations as ones that use data and reasoning to inform choices, not just to report on them. The phrase "to inform" matters. Data does not make decisions. Leaders do, but those decisions should rest on measurable information. The cycle on this slide has 5 stages. We observe something happening through data. We analyze what it means. A leader makes a choice. The choice gets acted on. The action produces new data that feeds into the next cycle. When this loop breaks down, when the leaders skip analysis, fail to measure outcomes, or treat data as a decoration rather than input, decisions drift towards intuition and the organization stops learning. The discipline of keeping the loop closed is what Davenport and Harris call the foundation of analytics-driven competition. The rest of this deck builds out what each of the 5 stages look like in revenue cycle operations. Davenport and Harris describe 4 stages of analytics maturity, and most organizations operate at different stages for different kinds of decisions. The first stage, descriptive, answers what happened, basic reporting on past performance. The second, diagnostic, asks why it happened, which adds root cause analysis. The third, predictive, asks what will happen next, which adds forecasting. The fourth, prescriptive, asks what we should do and adds recommendations. Healthcare has its own version of this framework. HIMSS, the Healthcare Information and Management Systems Society, publishes the Analytics Maturity Assessment Model, or AMAM, which is purpose-built for healthcare organizations and follows the same general progression. I'm naming both frameworks here to show the academic framework Davenport describes has a working healthcare validated equivalent. For operations leaders, the most valuable work usually lives at stages 2 and 3. Understanding the drivers of current performance and anticipating where it is heading. The rest of this deck maps each Module 4 decision type to the maturity stage that best describes it. The first kind of decision operations leaders make is process design. Chopra frames this through the product process matrix. The principle is simple. A high-volume, standardized product needs a different process than a low-volume, customized one. The diagonal on the matrix shows the zone of best fit. Off-diagonal positions cost more, are slower, and produce more defects. In revenue cycle, this shows up when we ask whether a workflow should be standardized across payers, meaning all insurance companies, or customized by payer based on volume and complexity. Blue Cross, for example, processes 100 claims a day from typical pediatric hospital. That looks like an assembly line. A small Medicaid managed care plan with 20 claims a week and different prior authorization rules every quarter looks like a job shop. Same product, different process. The data we need to answer this diagnostic is in maturity terms: volume by weight, denial pattern, cost to serve. Without that data, leaders default to one extreme: either standardize everything for the sake of simplicity or customize everything to chase short-term wins. Both miss the optimal design. This is the slide where the supply chain framing meets revenue cycle operations directly. Module 4 teaches that facility layout, workflow, and work design are operations decisions. In a physical operation, facility layout determines where workstations sit and how materials flow. In an information-driven operation, the same questions apply at a logical layer. The data facility at Lurie has 3 layers, and they map cleanly into Shoppers 3. First, the machinery layout maps to Epic system configuration. Epic is the electronic health record system. It is the operational backbone of clinical and revenue cycle work. It's where data is captured, how it routes through the work queues, and what each user sees at each step. Second, the workflow layout maps to our Jira portfolio. Jira is a project management tool from Atlassian. Our portfolio is organized into 4 value streams, which are themed layers of work: revenue protection and compliance, patient financial experience, operational efficiency and automation, and strategic growth and future planning. Third, work design maps to the innovation team's organizational structure. Strategy managers are grouped by revenue cycle area, and they're supported by analytics and project management roles. Shoppers' principles for facility design applies directly. We want to minimize delays, maintain flexibility, and align to strategy. The HFMA from 2016 confirms the pattern from the industry side. Revenue cycle transformation requires paired investments in workflow redesign and analytics infrastructure. The second design type is lifecycle stage decisions. Module 4 introduces the 4-stage product or service life cycle: introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. The curve on this slide is Shoppers' 2019 canonical shape. Revenue starts low at introduction, rises sharply through growth, plateaus at maturity, and falls off through decline. The strategic questions change at each stage. In introduction, the question is to whether to keep investing. In growth, where to add capacity. In maturity, how to defend, share, or improve efficiency. In decline, whether to attempt a turnaround or retire the offering. In healthcare, the same logic applies to service line investment, facility expansion, and major technology platform decisions. A pediatric specialty service line that is just emerging behaves like a product in introduction. A well-established cardiology program operating near capacity is in maturity. An aging clinical IT platform whose vendor is sunsetting support is in decline. Each one calls for a different kind of investment decision and a different kind of data to support it. At Lurie, these long horizon decisions live within our strategic growth and future planning value stream in our Jira portfolio. That is the lane for the net new implementations, service line expansions, and large-scale insourcing or outsourcing decisions. The data is longer horizon than operational data. Quarterly trends, contribution margin, and peer benchmarking against other pediatric hospitals play into this equation. This slide is a direct answer to the information that's needed for this assignment. What types of information are key for leaders and how do they access it? The matrix organizes both by decision tier and by cadence so that a non-healthcare leader could see how the pieces fit together from their industry. At the operational tier, frontline supervisors and team leads need real-time work queue data for daily decisions about reassigning work or escalating issues. At Lurie, this comes through our Epic EMR embedded right in the workflow. A supervisor or team lead can see a queue building up and act on it from within the same screen. At the tactile tier, mid-level managers need to trend data and root cause patterns for weekly and monthly decisions about where to focus improvement work. At Lurie, this is with Slicer Dicer, a drag-and-drop self-service analytics tool right inside of Epic, paired with Power BI where custom dashboards might be needed. At the strategic level, executives need peer benchmark metrics for quarterly and annual investment decisions. At Lurie, this is found through Epic Pulse, which translates benchmarks from revenue cycles across the broader Epic community to baseline the performance. HFMA from 2015 reinforces this exact framing. Real-time data analytics enables proactive decision-making. Matching the data to the question is what produces actionable insight rather than just reports sitting on someone's desk. Pulling everything together, the recommended policy is a 5-stage closed loop. This is specifically the deliverable that's being proposed for this prompt. First is observe. Match the data type and tool to the decision tier. Operational decisions get real-time in-system reporting. Tactile decisions get the self-service analytics. Strategic decisions get peer benchmarked industry data. The matrix on the previous slide is exactly this step. Analyze. Apply the right analytics maturity stage to the question, from descriptive through prescriptive, depending on how forward-looking the decision is. Decide. The leader makes the call with documented rationale, so the reasoning is preserved. This is the step where the data hands off the judgment. Act. Route the change through the appropriate JIRA value stream in the data facility. The right kind of work flows through the right lane of the portfolio, which connects back to the facility design from slide 6. Measure. Observe the outcome, feed it back into the loop, and update the opportunity log so the organization actually learns from each cycle. Without this step, the loop is broken. Davenport and Harris, as well as Chopra, describe the same discipline in different vocabulary. This is the recommended policy that suits the industry best practice. To make the recommended policy concrete, here is a worked example: the Denials and Write-Offs Prevention Committee at Lurie. It is currently operating every month. Quick term refresher. The denial is the payer's refusal to pay a submitted claim. A write-off is the financial loss when the denial cannot be recovered. The committee's purpose is to prevent denials before they happen and recover the ones that already did. The work lives primarily in the revenue protection and compliance value stream of our JIRA portfolio, and it overlaps into operational efficiency and automation where corrective actions become workflow or system changes, or patient financial experience where the work touches the patient-facing front end or back end. The committee operates on a 4-week cadence that maps directly into the 5-stage closed loop from the previous slide. The small numbered chips on each week card show which policy stages that week covers. For week 1, the prior month's denial data is distributed and work groups assign research. That is observe plus the start of analyze. Week 2, the work group members conduct root cause sampling using Slicer Dicer, the Epic self-service analytics tool. Deep analyze. Week 3, findings are reviewed and action plans are developed. Decide plus the start of act. Week 4, the monthly committee meeting, work group leads report out, and the opportunity log in JIRA is updated. Measure closes the loop. The committee also demonstrates the Module 4 work design process. It's 3 specialized work groups, each organized by a part of the revenue cycle that they own. Patient Access Financial Services, or PAFS, for front end. HB for hospital billing, the facility side. PB for professional billing, the physician services side. That is the work design pattern that Module 4 describes, applied to a real data-to-decision cycle. HFMA, both from their 2025 and 2026 sources, confirm that this is the pattern that produces sustainable revenue cycle improvement. To close, 3 takeaways. First, match the data and access method to the decision tier. Operational decisions need real-time data. Tactile decisions need trend analytics. Strategic decisions need peer benchmark data. One-size-fits-all access fails on every tier. Second, you must design the data facility deliberately. The system configuration layer, the project management portfolio layer, and the organizational structure layer are part of how information flows into decisions. They need to be designed with the same intentionality that Chopra brings to physical facility design. Third, close the loop with measurement and governance. Without that discipline, the data to decision cycle breaks and the organization stops learning. The denial committee on the previous slide is what this looks like when it works. Revenue cycle is one of healthcare's most consequential supply chains. 2019 Chopra, Davenport and Harris from 2017, HMFA from both sources of 2025 and 2026, and HIMS from 2024 all describe the same discipline in different vocabulary. Designing the data facility deliberately is what turns information into competitive advantage rather than just another report on someone's desk. Thank you.